So when it comes to the Bible, there's a couple things that you got to understand before I tell you this, because it's the story. This is what's happening, and this is where we're at in this part of the story. And so the Bible speaks primarily about the origins, histories, laws, salvation, and the end of human history. Now, most teachers deal with the origin, history, and salvation of the Bible, but very few deal with the last days of the Bible. And it is in this section of the Bible that we discover the end game of God and the end game of Satan. Let me add one more piece of the puzzle to add a context, a reference to understand why any story ends the way it does is based on how a story begins. And so there is a little bit of origins that you need to understand here about good and evil and its origins, and why this galactic battle that we're seeing playing out on Earth is actually the war between God and Satan that has been got here. Satan has a hate that burns hotter than hell for God. That's how much he hates God. And so just a few things about his origin. And this is mainly outlined in Ezekiel 28, but he was created as Lucifer. He is traditionally known as being in the Garden of Eden first, with every gemstone his covering. He also was covered with gold and with tambourines, the Bible calls them tabrets, and organ pipes, musical pipes built into his very physicality. God called Lucifer the anointed cherub that covereth. And then in Ezekiel 28, he recounts to Ezekiel what he told Satan. And God told Satan, he said, you are the anointed, well, I'm saying Satan, but his name was Lucifer. But he said, you are the anointed cherub that covereth. Then God tells Satan that I set you up like that. And God reveals the position that Lucifer had in heaven, because Lucifer actually had a job in heaven. He was serving on the holy mount of God. He was walking up and down the midst of the stones of fire, which is fitting for his eternal damnation. God called Lucifer perfect in his ways from the day he was created until iniquity was found in Lucifer. God then calls out the iniquity and its cause. Now remember everything that Satan had going on with him. Satan had gemstones covering his entire body. Satan had musical instruments protruding out of his body. He had gold, and he was an angel walking in the holy mountain of God up and down the stones of fire. And God said, by the number of giftings I have given you, the gifts have filled you with violence, and thou hast sinned. And he sinned in heaven, not on earth. And bad versus good, or good versus evil, was born. So we have a setup here that God found iniquity in the heart of Lucifer. And now Lucifer's judgment is coming. And so God tells him, I cast you out as profane, out of your position on the holy mountain of God, and I will destroy you. Now this is what God says, and this is what a God does. Because there's no grace in heaven. There's no mercy in heaven. It's not needed. It was only needed on the earth. But it's not needed in heaven or earth. And nor is it exhibited in heaven or earth. Because the only way you can be entered into heaven or earth is to actually have received his grace or mercy on earth. There won't be none in judgment. This is why we hear people say, when God says, depart from me, I never knew you. You can't argue your case because there's no mercy. There's no grace. But let's revisit that word profane. God said he would cast Lucifer out as profane. Now we know the word profanity. The word profanity is a word that describes a curse word. Okay. And so interesting enough, the Hebrew word for profane is the word halal, like Arab halal, Halal, the food, meaning that this is permissible in the Aramaic, but in the Hebrew, it means wounded and take inheritance. Take inheritance. God, profaning Satan, in essence, cursed him by taking away his inheritance. Satan had an inheritance in heaven. And he was one of the highest ranking individuals to have an inheritance in heaven. And his inheritance was taken away. He was cast out of his place. And now this is the last piece of the puzzle. How would you respond? We know how Satan responded. He responded with retribution, having a murderous, raging, lying, deceiving, hateful vendetta against the God who took his inheritance. And now it's Satan's doing, duty, and purpose to walk the wound, to walk around the world seeking whom he would destroy. Sorry, I had to write down everything. And so now, after this relationship that Lucifer had with God, he's now cast down to the earth. And this brings us to today, the last days, and how Satan's anger is playing out today in real time across the entire world. Name anything in the world you can see happening that involves confusion, good and evil, and I can show you where the Bible mentions it, and if part of God's end game, and if it's a part of God's end game or Satan's end game.